All right, I think we'll continue on here. We're going to do some quick introductions, and then I'm going to hand it off to Estella, who actually inspired me to focus on this as a webinar. She wrote this great article. You can read the original article at trumpetheadquarters.com. Is that right, Estella?
Yep, that's right. Trumpetheadquarters.com/blog, I think.
Blog, yes. Go to her blog, and she wrote an article called Learning Trumpet by Accident. She's going to talk about it. I'm going to let her talk about it, but that was the inspiration for tonight. So anyway, let's start with the introductions. Connor, you're in my top left-hand corner, so let's start with you.
All right, hello. It's great to see everyone here, or at least virtually be in the presence of you. My name is Connor Eisenmenger. I'm a Denis Wick Artist and a freelancer and public school teacher out in Seattle, Washington. I recently moved here from Chicago, proud teacher of Seattle Public Schools, and glad to be here.
Connor used to be my neighbor, and now he's not, but I'm glad you're finding a good time in Seattle. Estella, you're next.
Hey everybody, Estella. I'm a Denis Wick Artist. I'm the owner at trumpetheadquarters.com. Talking to you from Austin, Texas, and I'm happy to be here.
Thanks, Estella. And Jay, you're up.
Hi, everybody. Jay Jennings here from Los Angeles, California. Very proud Denis Wick artist. Honestly, I heard about this webinar and I kind of wanted to get in just to listen because I was excited about everybody's stories. So I'll have some stuff to say, but I'm excited to listen as well. So good to be here.
And Farnell.
Oh, that leaves me. Farnell, trumpeter, freelance trumpeter, former educator, lo-fi hip hop trumpeter. I kind of do everything. Man of coffee and many talents, and thankful for being here with everyone.
Thanks, Farnell. I forgot I was going to order some coffee from you. I'll get on that later with you. Kind of brew coffee. Estelle, I'm going to hand it over to you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that article you wrote and what was the inspiration behind it?
All right, cool. So a while back now, I wrote this article that was called Accidental Success in Trumpet Playing, because I always tell my students that they're playing by accident, you know, especially like the beginner ones and pretty much all the ones that have, I don't know, under 5 years under their belt. And that came about because I would see them succeeding at something. For example, they just hit this new high note that they've never hit before, and they didn't even try. You know, it wasn't an intentional thing. And their face lights up and they're surprised and wow, what was that? I'm like, man, that was a high A, congratulations. They're like, wow. And then they go to do it again and they falter and crash and burn, you know, and there's this confusion like, well, why did that happen? And how was it so easy? And so I see this all the time in teaching. So I'm a full-time teacher. I teach 6 days a week. And I see this all the time. And I'm always trying to figure out how to teach them to recognize those moments and shape them so they can actually learn from them and not for them to just be this occasional treat, you know, that they have succeeded at blank. So that was the main idea of the article. And then it talks a little bit about how to experiment, to kind of learn the actual motor functions that need to happen to make mistakes on purpose. So then you can learn what not to do. And hopefully through process of elimination, you can learn what to do. And then I talk a little bit about the quiet eye, which is this term that refers to the gaze an athlete has right before they execute a movement, like when a tennis player's eyes lock on the ball right before they hit it with the racket. And so I sort of translate that to music and I call it quiet song, which is when you can clearly hear pitch, especially for brass, right? You can hear pitch, and so then you can get that to come out of the bell. With young players, it works great, but if they can't hear the pitch, then it's, you know, that luck, that method pretty much ends right there. And so that's where that whole idea came from. I experience it in teaching all the time. And I'm still trying to figure out how to how to put it in a cool, neat box for them to open it up. So
in listening to your description of this, luck, in terms of that article, to me communicates anything that you can't define. Like, if you can't define how you did it by luck. And so I think I'd like to move on and kind of look, for all that, so for my story, I was a natural player for years. I played the trumpet, and I would hear something and I could play it. So I thought I was fantastic, but I really didn't know how I was doing anything. And I would prepare for auditions. And so for me, I was thinking, I'm doing my preparation. Hopefully I intersect with that opportunity and I'll get lucky and win this gig, or I'll get lucky and do that, get whatever I want. But if I really didn't know what I was doing, I really wasn't preparing in the right way either. So I think let's look at this from a couple different angles and see if any of this rings to our attendees, or maybe to us also, as we're listening to each other's stories, of ways we thought we were really preparing, but maybe we were depending on luck. So let's start with, we're talking about looking at our students. And to any of you guys open, Estella or anybody on any of our panelists, what's the end effect of a student who's kind of riding on luck? How long does that last for them? And is it ever deceiving to you as a teacher? Do you ever see them do something consistently enough, but you can tell they don't really understand what they're doing?
there we go. Yeah, so like I said, I see this, a lot with students. The ones that are just consistently lucky, it can go two ways. They can just have a enlightenment day one day and they sort of figure it out. And that, I think those things come from the teacher. So if the teacher also doesn't really know what they're doing, then that kid is just riding on luck till he hits a wall. But if the teacher is consistently there, defining those moments with them and getting them to understand the mechanics whenever they need to understand the mechanics, now you're developing method, plan A, not plan A through Z. Hopefully life will give you the right one. So yeah, the ones that play by luck, which is 90% of them, if I'm being honest, that's how it is, especially in brass. Not just my live students, but my students at trumpetquotas.com. I get, videos and stuff like questions all the time. Well, why is this happening? Yesterday, this is the big one. Yesterday I sounded great, but then the next day it was terrible, And yes, that is a small part of that is the nature of a metal instrument that you put on your face. That it's very delicate and things like that. But I think when the students kind of rely on that luck and they just sort of think, well, I'm awesome because I can always just get this and it just comes naturally. I think most of the time they're gonna find a wall at some point or another. I was much like you, Mary. So I grew up with it. Like as soon as I started playing the trumpet, I had a nice tone, and I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't have an idea until what I was doing until I was probably 25. Same thing with vibrato. The first time I would teach someone how to actually vibrato, probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, I had been doing a vocalist's vibrato, which is what they call diaphragmatic vibrato, since I was, I don't know, 15. I never learned how to do it. Nobody taught me how to do that. I just sort of, listen to music, listen to that, and just did it. And the first time I had to do that, man, that is hard. So yeah, I don't know how far that can take you, but to me, knowing what not to do is what really helps to narrow that down.
Okay, I thought I was going to interrupt somebody. For students who find that, like, I think the reckoning day for students in their lesson is where they, like Estella, you were saying, well, it sounded great yesterday, or I got through it yesterday, but I don't know why I can't do today. What's the best thing a student can do with that? When they get into that situation. In my opinion, probably a student has to get there a few times over until they realize something is happening and that they need to change something. But what are the first steps that you think that they can take to kind of break themselves out of that cycle?
Yeah, it really depends on their experience level. I think professionals and advanced musicians that we kind of know what's going on and why things are happening a certain way. But when they tell me that, the first thing I said is, okay, well, what did you do yesterday when you were having such a great session? And they'll be like, oh, well, I had just been playing for 30 minutes. I warmed up and I sounded awesome. Okay, well, what about today? He's like, well, this morning I played for 3.5 hours and then I jammed out some high notes and now I sound terrible. 90% of the time, it's this super common sense thing that's just like, well, no wonder. Or, 2 weeks ago I sounded great. Now I don't, but I didn't play for a week before today. So, it's usually a lot about that. Sometimes it's nerves.
Bingo. I was gonna say nerves.
Yeah.
Well, and that brings
Yeah.
up an interesting point, I think, between intention and luck. You probably aren't defining what you're doing as, oh, I hope I get lucky, or, oh, I'm intentionally doing this. But nerves and a lot of other feeling things, I think, are signs of where you're establishing yourself on a feeling basis or on an intentional basis. So I feel great today. How's my day going to be? I feel really good on this. I'm happy about this warm up, so I must have a good day. Or I feel awful about my warm up. It's going to be a terrible day. Those are a lot of, when you hear these things in your dialogue of like, it's very feeling oriented and very emotional oriented, then you know that there's not a whole lot of method behind it. Have you guys felt or experienced that?
Yeah. Especially when I was younger, I had no clue about those things, warming up and 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 what is warming up and how are you warming up? And also for me as a trumpeter, I felt like my luck or my natural talent only took me so far. And for me to go further in my development where I knew I should be, I had to like kind of go back and say, what is happening? What is not happening? Why did I not make that audition? Or why didn't I get this thing? And and had to kind of like start back over and figure out some things fundamentally. But yeah, the luck is only going to get you so far.
Yeah, I still experience forms of perform performance anxiety. Um, and I don't think I show it. I think I do a good job of like masking it. But then it affects my chops. I know it does because I always try and get to that point. Like I think Estella was talking about like how do I get. I played it yesterday and it felt great. How do I get back to that point? Every time I play something that feels great, I'm always like, all right. I make it a point to like figure out like what is happening here. Why does that feel amazing? Because I want to reproduce that on the bandstand. But depending on the gig and the high pressure or not any pressure, you're just kind of like you're so I get so amped up about wanting to feel how I felt when it was awesome in the practice room. And then when I play, I so many times I'm so disappointed at how it felt and not how it sounded, and never got any complaints really on on it sounding bad when I thought it felt bad. I think it's important to know that, you're definitely your own worst critic. And if just because it feels bad, it doesn't mean it necessarily sounds bad to everybody. I've kind of figured that out over the years. Some of my what I thought were my worst nights chop wise, I was just like, gosh, I can't believe it. I couldn't even get through the first two songs or whatever. And then, at the end of the night, somebody's like, God, it's your best night ever. And you're like, you also have to learn how to accept compliments as an artist of any kind, and just say, well, thank you very much, thank you. But yeah, performance anxiety, I think, definitely has a role on how my trumpet face feels. Still working on it to this day.
I think I'd like to piggyback off of that point a little bit. It's a really good point of performance anxiety and kind of how it relates to feedback for someone who's trying to grow as an artist in their craft and trying to figure out what the next learning target is. And in the education world, we talk about feedback as kind of a commodity that can come late or it can come early and often. And early and often is always going to be the desired form of feedback for a student who's trying to learn anything in music. And that can be yourself. I think one of the most helpful things that I've done in demystifying some of the variables that have affected my playing, or maybe I thought they affected my playing, whether it be on a gig or an audition or something high stakes where energy is elevated, is just, recording myself while I'm shedding to kind of replicate that red light sort of feeling. And then additionally, keep the tape recorder on in your pocket, or the, voice memo thing during the audition. Some of the best information that I've ever gotten from classical auditions, school things, otherwise, have been from those sort of tapes of, well, my perception of the performance was X, but now I have this feedback and that's Y, and that's far more definitive. And I can take that and that can be something that informs my learning goal for the next whatever you got. So there you go. That would be my version of the feedback loop with performance anxiety. Fun stuff though.
Yeah, I'd like to also jump in there with the performance anxiety thing. And I think most people get it, and it's a very natural thing. And to me, the best way that I have found to overcome that is to just focus on the song, just block everything out. I think when I was probably already my master's degree was when I finally figured it out, to where I would just prepare and prepare, and then right when you're waiting outside that door, it's like the worst wait, and I figured out probably my first year of master's to just tell myself, all I got to do when I get in there is breathe and sing. That's all there is at that point. The notes have been done, and everything has been learned. And recording yourself, I think that's one thing I really missed out on back then, because when I had great auditions, there was this one audition that always stands out to me because I don't remember it. Apparently, it was fantastic. I nailed it. I got first chair in wind ensemble at USC, which, when you're in college, that is a huge deal. We were playing this super cool piece called Snake Alley, which is on iTunes. And the thing is that I don't remember it. About 20 minutes after I walked out, I felt like, I think that was good, and then you wait the whole excruciating weekend, and the results came up. And the first day I went back, Dr. Reese, the band director, said, "Stella, you just sounded great. You nailed all the high Ds. Man, it was just great." And I'm just sitting here, well, I don't remember that. I hope I can do this in band. So I really wish I had recorded those things so I could look back and see what it looked like and what it actually sounded like to have this artistic flow, which is when you're just in the zone. So I think, I don't know if I got lucky that day or if I had just prepared really well. I don't know, but those things happen too. Just focus on the song and I think it works a lot better.
I have a good example of how luck showed its face in its very primitive form. I haven't done very many auditions in my adult life, but in school there was the auditions that we all did via All Region and all that, and there was an All Region jazz band audition that I did my sophomore year of high school, and I was playing the ballad of the. You had to play three pieces: a swing piece, a ballad, and a Latin jazz piece or something. And the ballad was usually trying to figure out who's going to play lead because they wrote some stuff in the upper register that was pretty long and legato. They wanted somebody with a big sound and everything. And that was not me anyways. That was not my vibe anyways. But this one particular audition, I was playing the ballad and this my spit valve, the old spit valve, it literally just came apart. Like in the middle of my audition, you know, it was very unfortunate because it ruined my audition, and I didn't make the top all region jazz band, and I wasn't able to tape for state. Now there was kind of a silver lining because I made the second all region jazz band, and you know, both the first all region jazz band and the second all region jazz band, they both have a concert together. My man featured me on a ballad in the second all region jazz band, and it was cool because everybody was kind of like, "What are you doing in the second jazz band?" And I was like, my spit valve broke." So like luck, literally, like that stuff can happen too. Like how many times I feel so fortunate not to play these orchestra gigs where I see principal trumpet player like putting a harmon mute in his bell or something. I'm like, that would fall out of my bell within like 10 seconds and it would be the most quietest part of the song. And it's terrible. You know, that is part of luck as well. You know, that kind of stuff just happens. Anybody else have any
I've had that happen at All-State Jazz once in Colorado, and it was like right in the middle of my solo, and it just went like, wow! It just
so
fell
loud,
out.
so loud, so loud.
Have you heard the story of Bud Herseth, you know, famous principal trumpet player from CSO? And there's a story, I don't remember what symphony they were playing, but very quiet spot in the symphony. I think you can actually, it might be on YouTube, I don't remember. But anyway, his mute falls out in the like in the middle of this very quiet section, and they're on risers, and it goes ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk. And because, you know, they're deep on stage, you can't really see whose bell it came from. You just heard it. So he leans over, picks it up, and hands it to the second chair trumpet player, but it was his mute that fell out.
You know, like it's like we don't have enough to deal with being a brass player. But like, if you screw in the valves wrong on the trumpet, you can't blow air through it, right? So that's like another mean trick that whoever invented this thing did. It's like if you need a little quick little valve oil in the middle of a song and you screw those things in the wrong way, you put it up and you got a solo, and you're literally like your face blows. It's like a slapstick comedy. It really is.
Well, I think you guys brought up, I mean, I think performance anxiety is a huge thing area that we leave up to chance or to luck. But you guys mentioned some really good things like recording yourself, you know, trying to define those areas of what does it look like when I'm in the zone? What does it feel like when I'm in the zone? What have I done to be in the zone? One of the best pieces of advice that I was given was when I was taking conducting classes for my degree, my performance degree in college. And our conductor, who was a terrifying lady, just absolutely terrifying. She was brilliant. But I remember the first time you conducted, you know, you had to conduct for her and your small group of, you know, 8 other students. And before you got up there, she said, "All right, I know you've prepared really well, but when you hold that baton for the first time in front of your, you know, your group, your hand's going to shake nonstop. There's nothing you can do about it. So you just need to like look at your hand and be like, it's shaking, and then you conduct," you know. And I have to say that's taken me through so many nervous situations because I get horrible performance anxiety. I don't know if you other trumpet players have gone through this, but I feel like some muscle in the tip of my nose starts vibrating, and like when it's really bad anxiety, it feels like it's vibrating from here to here, and like everything is just like but when it's even gotten that bad, I just think, okay, you're nervous, or okay, your brain's telling you you're exhausted, but you're probably not. You're probably just nervous, and then just keep on playing and refocus. So like there's things that you can do to take the chance and the luck out of the whole anxiety situation too. Is there any other like mantras you guys tell yourselves to keep you in the zone when things come up to distract you?
I don't know if it's mantras, but I'm usually like, back when I was with Jill Scott's band, it's kind of like, we got this R&B soul is smooth, but at the same time, backstage we have like the trap hip hop on. We're kind of amping ourselves up, and then I'll get on the stage and I'm like, okay, Farnell, you've done this many times. We're about to do it. Put that horn on your face, deep breaths, blow. I kind of just try to just really just hype myself up and get ready and just kind of shake those like beginning jitters out. Usually like the beginning and sometimes in the middle of the show, I got to shake out the jitters and stuff. It's like, okay, let's do this. This is what we do every day. But I need to probably, now that I'm getting older, I feel like I need better routines, and so I could discipline myself so I don't have to worry about missing notes or anything. Because in that line of duty and those type of bands, you can't really miss a whole lot of notes, because if the main artist has to turn around and look at you in an important part because you missed a note, that could mean that you might be getting a little talking to, or you might have to go home soon. So that's how serious it is.
Well, that's one of those situations where like you don't want to win a job like that by luck, because you have to know how you do it over and over and over and over again. Because like, all right, you got lucky and won the audition. Now you have to go play for, Jill Scott's trumpet section, and you're the only trumpet player for the tour. If you can't do it every night in a row, for 7 days straight or whatever, that's bad. So you have
Oh
to
yeah.
know exactly how you're doing it and how you need to recreate it.
That was my exact experience with with this audition that I was talking about earlier. Because the part was like a bunch of high C's and D's, and there was this little like one measure solo. It was like insane. I had two notes in the staff and then two notes up like C sharp, I think, or D or C sharp, and it was just like ba-da, and you just got one shot. And so it was that moment when I really started getting to the practice room, because now there's all this pressure, and expectation attached to it, and it's like your chance. So that's when I really started getting into it. I'm like, okay, what am I doing? What is tongue placement? What is all this stuff I've never learned? Um, you know, all these different things. I'm always kind of jealous of like people with quote unquote regular jobs. Like, accountants are very lucky. I'm sure when they sit down to do their accounting, they're not just like, okay, here we go, let's do it. It always makes me very jealous.
I think I can speak a little bit of this about like kind of some centering activities that I do. I could speak maybe in the context of improvised music. I've been in a lot of situations where I'm looking around at the band and I think, wow, yeah, they're really good. Like, how am I going to get out of this jam? And then that can get in your head a little bit and psych you out when you're doing it in the moment. And I like the idea of mindfulness activities in the context of, regular everyday life, and how can we translate that sort of centering activity to a musical experience. And so I wouldn't recommend, because I've tried it before, like 5 things you can see. Like while you're on stage, if you find 5 things you can see, then you've missed the first 8 bars and you should probably just go ahead and put your horn away. But I try to think of pivotal moments where I grounded myself with something objective in my musical environment that really helped me think more freely and eventually get me back on that flow sort of state. And one particularly stressful moment was being a young pup at an Abersold camp when like the pros come in to play with the horn section. It can be a stressful environment. And so I think the best thing that I did was like, man, like I'm not going to try to overplay these outstanding musicians that are around me. And I remember Ed Soph was playing drums, and I remember thinking that he was doing a bunch of bop in the left hand and snare drum. And I'm like, okay, imitative polyphony. We're just gonna like whatever he plays on his snare drum, I'm just gonna parrot it back. And I did that for like 4-8 bars. And eventually it was kind of hooking up, and I didn't realize that I was stressed anymore because I had just taken enough ideas from my sonic environment to get me back into that sort of flow state. And we finished up the tune, I hang on. He goes, the only one I think that's really listening is the trombonist. And I said, yes, I did. So I think finding something that is not yourself and your playing that's psyching you out that you can listen to inside of your musical environment, at least for an improviser, that's something that I do that gets me thinking less about like, hey, wouldn't it be bad if I screwed up this note? You know, like, don't think about that. Get yourself back in the music, and that would be an objective way to do it. So that's something that I try to do.
I will jump right in there with the whole meditation thing. And Mary was saying, you know, she does some just kind of accepting what your body is doing when it's doing it. Like, oh, my hand's shaking. Cool. You know, moving on. So that's real like meditation kind of driven stuff, you know. About I think it was 3 years ago, I started meditating almost daily. And I kept it up for a long time, and I still do it very consistently. And there's this one thing that always kind of stands out to me, and which ties right in with what Connor was saying, was that when you really focus on something, you can only focus on that one thing. You know, when you're meditating and you're like eyes closed and you're in there, if you try to just focus on your breathing, you can only focus on your breathing. It may seem like you can, like it may seem like you're trying to focus on the breathing, and then all these other thoughts like, I gotta cook and my dog's whining and I have lessons in an hour, you know, come in. But you're actually not thinking of those things simultaneously. It just seems like it because you're switching from one to the other so fast. But when you're really focused on the breath, you can really only think about the breath, which ends in a really good meditation because you can be in full control. And so in the same way in music and like, you know, the experiences like what Connor was just talking about, he was 100%, I mean, you were 100% focused on this thing, like, okay, back and forth, cool. And so it's just coming out because you can't do that and do something else. You can't do that and freak out, you know? So when I started figuring out this audition thing, like, okay, if I just focus on the song, I really don't have any time to wonder about what is going to happen when I get to measure 16. There's no way. You can't do both. So training yourself to be hyper focused on one thing, and maybe even meditation, helps a lot to eliminate a lot of that what if I miss it, you know.
I will say one thing really quick though, just a quick note for anxiety, specifically to trombone players. It's actually not as bad for us because if we get nervous, we just get beautiful slide vibrato. That hand's shaking. It's just it's gonna beautify the music. So wish you guys had that.
Just
Yeah.
butter, baby.
Yeah,
Butter.
man.
We get
Absolutely.
some Bill Watchers.
Yeah.
Vibrato happening.
You know, I don't want to stick on anxiety, but it's funny because being wind instrumentalist, it's anxiety affects your breathing a lot. And you know, we're literally trying to master the breath as brass players. That the older I get, the more I understand that this instrument is about air, and it is about the way you're breathing and the way you're using your body to breathe, which muscles you're using to push that air. Very important. I was relating to Farnell's story earlier about he was talking about you know, kind of like when your luck runs out as a trumpet player, just relying on natural ability and just how, you know, just getting by on playing gigs and just doing it, right? That's like, you know, if you throw yourself in the ring with whoever, you're gonna, you know, you're gonna fight and get something out. So you develop all these bad habits, and I had a minor little surgery last November where I had to take 6 weeks off, and it was just reminding me about how much the breath is involved with this instrument. And if you have any anxiety at all, it just makes it very difficult to regulate that breathing. So, you know, if you can, I think it's important to get that under wraps before you have any, you know, sort of performance coming up, or figure out a way. Like we're all kind of expressing. I don't really have one, as you can tell. I'm just kind of talking about how it affects me. I don't have a way to, like, literally calm myself down on stage. I just kind of like am anxious, and I mean, it's not at a level where I can't perform, but it does affect me, like, physically. Like I think it physically affects my mouth, like the moisture in my mouth or something. Like it's weird, strange.
Interestingly, on that note, Jay, I have always had a lot of like anxiety attacks my air first and foremost, and especially with range, like where I have to go into range. Um, and it's something that's been completely intangible to me. I Once I realized I wasn't really uninformed natural player and I started bringing intention to everything in my playing, I really nailed down everything except the breathing thing when I got nervous, because that was just a mystery to me. It was like there's thousands of muscles. Actually, I don't know. There could just be hundreds, but that work in your chest, as you're breathing and whatnot. And it felt like very specific parts or very specific muscles were tensing up maybe when I was breathing that would create a chokehold, and then I'd start blacking out. But I didn't know, I couldn't recreate it. Like, of course, you say, okay, well, try and recreate it, run around the block, play for people, whatever. But the only time this seemed to happen was when I was on stage. We were doing, it was when I was touring with my brass quintet. I was playing Virgin de la Macarena on the second half of the show, of a 2-hour show. So I was already winded a little bit, and then and we were playing Bach. I mean, the brass quintet show, I started doing everything. So, and the only time this would manifest was when I was on stage doing that. So, and it started with just, oh, I'm a little lightheaded, and by the end of the tour, it was like I was nearly passing over or passing out. And so I don't think I ever really figured it out until I was pregnant, because when I was pregnant, my wonderful little son got bigger and bigger and pushed up and pushed up and pushed up. And I was told that, oh, you're just not going to get enough air. But what I learned was I was going to have to take slower air and take much more time to fill up my lungs, because there wasn't as much room. Yes. But it just was like, I could get enough air in there and just squeeze them back down. It just was going to take longer to do it. And the whole act of breathing slowly, like having to breathe across 2 bars to get my full amount of air, taught me so much about how I was filling my lungs. I thought the issue was with expelling the air, but it was how I was filling my lungs, I think, as I got nervous. And so I was thinking, man, if I ever have this again, what I would do is I'd tie like a resistance band around my chest, because that's what it felt like. And just to make it more difficult for me to get that air in as I'm breathing, because now I want to take a deep breath because I'm talking about breathing, but but that's the thing. Like, you have to stick at it. You might just give up because you think, oh, well, this happens. I just don't know how to fix it. It's just too intangible. But there are so many different ways, and so many people that have gone through the same thing. I think everything that you tell yourself is just something that's going to have to remain a mystery. There's someone out there who's gone through it also, because you want to figure it out. But I can totally relate to that, Jay.
You know that saying, they like to say in the industry, fake it till you make it. I just feel like with brass players, that's not real. You only can fake it if you're trying to go to a certain level in your career musically or whatever. You only can fake it for so long, before you get to a point where you got to actually start sitting down and working on getting better or finding out whatever your shortcomings is to get better. I mean, that's just, even when I got into playing more funk music, I was like, oh man, I need to go back to my fundamentals and work on my articulation and also my breathing and also my lung tones. Because when you're doing, literally doing a rehearsal for 8 to 10 hours a day for almost a month, so you could be on a road for 2 or 3 months, all of those things come into play. And if you're not in shape and ready, I mean, you can hurt yourself out there on the road.
Yeah, I feel like we're talking about this anxiety a lot. Maybe this should be an actual full other webinar, right? Yeah. But on that topic though, like the whole lip thing that Jay was saying and the nose thing, it's all the small spaces. And when you're in that like super high state of anxiety, which I feel like the older you get, the more likely it is that you've experienced this, at some point in your life. Maybe you got some crazy news, like you're gonna be a dad or a mom, or you have an audition or whatever. When that anxiety is super high, your body goes into that fight or flight, right? And so all the attention goes to the large motor functions, like your arms and legs in the center of your core, so you can fight or run away. And I've always sort of gone back to that and thought, you know, that's why my tongue just stops working when I'm really nervous. It clocks out and it's just like, I'm done. I'll be back tomorrow. And I can't move it the same way, you know, as when I'm in like a normal relaxed state. And you know, obviously things are less, you know, wet in the mouth and all these different things. So like the corners kind of feel like all of a sudden they lost all the strength, even though you've been practicing for 3 months every day and all these different things. So I started to make sure that I practiced when I felt anxious about blank, you know, it could be whatever. And I actually started figuring out that doing long tones, like really long tones, it's basically like meditating, breathing, because you have to take this huge breath and then let it out forever, you know, in this really small amount. And it started to calm me down. And so after a while, it sort of became like playing calm me down. And my brain, you know, there's a neuroplasticity when your brain learns these new behaviors and remembers them. And then after a while, when I would get nervous, I would pick up the horn and I felt better. And so I don't know, you know, somebody out there must have the same problem, I'm sure. Start making it a point to pick up your horn and play when you feel anxious or stressed or whatever. It could have the same effect on you.
I totally relate to that. I'm starting to make that connection between like my long tone warm up routine and meditation. I seriously feel that. I do the same type of breathing when I do yoga as when I played trumpet. I mean, when I practice trumpet, when I'm doing my warm up routine or whatever. So it's very easy for me to get into some sort of like meditate. Well, false. It's not very easy for me to get into that meditative state, but sometimes it happens. I have to focus really hard to get there. But yeah, that's interesting, you know, relating the breathing to everything. Gosh, man, breathing is so important with everything. I was talking to a buddy of mine who never really was a runner ever his whole life. And he was and then like 2 months ago I was talking to him. He was like, yeah, I finally kind of figured out running. He's like, somebody should have told me it was all about the breathing. I was like, yeah, well, you know, I'm sure 1,000 people did. You just weren't listening, like me when I was a young student. And it's like every teacher I ever had told me I need to use more air. And it was just me not listening, being young and wanting to play music more than I wanted to play the trumpet. You know, that's an interesting thing for me is uh learning to stay consistent with a routine as a trumpet player to become a better improviser. You know, it's a whole balancing match, you know, because you don't want to, there's so many things to be thinking about while you're playing just an F in the staff, you know. And you can, like we were talking about meditating, just playing a concert F in the staff and really focusing in on it. You know, to get to that meditative state while as an improviser, it's like, you got to put in a lot of hours practicing, but we're not going to go there, Mary. We're not going to talk about how, you know, practicing is all we need to do to make our own luck, because that's not it. It's not it. I mean, there's something to practicing a lot to get to a level, to get to a comfort level to where you can feel that creative flow that we're all talking about. But you know, not to be repetitive, but it really is about practice, you know, to get to that level of aural bliss, if you will, where you're just kind of not really thinking about what you're doing. You know, it's the things that I tried to figure out when I was young. They're kind of happening as an adult, and it's like the lucky times now. Like when I was an adult, a kid, and I figured something out on the piano, and I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was really cool. Didn't know what it was, but I knew what it was my whole life. I just couldn't tell you what it was. Right? I could sit there and play it for you, but um, as I get older and these things happen to me accidentally or luckily, like if I'm improvising and something, I'll be honest with you. I mean, there's been a couple times playing solos when I literally accidentally land on a note and it's like, all right, yes, good job. That's the 9. Didn't know it was the 9. Didn't know we were going to that chord, but all right, got it. You know, like luck plays a factor there too. But I was talking about getting to that state of mind that where you kind of are able to create your own luck, so to speak, with other people at the same time, simultaneously, telepathically, however you want to say it. It's only happened to me like a handful of times in my life, really. But as an improviser, I always strive to get to that point, and the only way to get to that point is to put in the time, really, at this instrument here, as an improviser.
I think that is actually an excellent point that like pulls everything we've been talking about together, Jay, because yes, you're 100% practice. You have to practice to have your skills to par. But I think where a lot of students and where I'm hearing a lot of our communication revolve around is practicing has to serve the mental preparedness also and vice versa. And so like what we see with students, they practice to get technically proficient, or they practice to get the higher note, or they practice to get here, but they're potentially not doing the mental game also. You know, what is your practicing serving, you know, and they can't answer that. Similarly, like when I was in grad school, I'd get to my lessons and I you know, be tired from, you know, traveling to the lesson and climbing 5 flights of stairs, and it'd be freezing cold and windy in Chicago. And I'd like put my 4 trumpet cases down, get the instrument out and just play a couple notes. And every single time without fail, my trumpet teacher would be like, why did you choose those notes to play? And I was like, I don't know, I'm freezing. It took me, I got stuck in 3 different turnstiles, you know. It would make me so angry. And it didn't really dawn on me until I left. I was done with grad school. I was like, why am I playing those 5 notes? You know, we can answer why we practice technique. We can answer why we do a lot of things. But if you ask yourself, what is it serving? And you can't answer that, then, you know, that's maybe where I'm living by luck is. And I think that's where your description of improvising comes in. Maybe that's something where improvisers have a head start on us, is that, you know, what all of that practice is serving. You're trying to specifically get to that state so you can improvise. Whereas me as an orchestral musician, I'm learning this technique. I'm listening to those recordings. I'm trying to mimic this so I can win the job. That's not necessarily, maybe that's not the healthy thing to be serving your preparation for.
That's an interesting point. You know, I think there's so much to gain from having good harmonic knowledge early. Whether it's getting to a piano at a young age or studying music theory or whatever you want to call it. I call this the motherboard of all instruments because I mean, I was fortunate enough to have one around when I was like 4 or 5 years old. So the transition to trumpet, I literally felt that my transition to trumpet was easier than the person next to me who didn't have access to the piano and didn't know what I knew in my own mind. Like I said, I couldn't tell you what a C major chord was, but I could definitely play I could play a blues in the key of C major. I knew what a C major chord was, you know, but like I didn't know all the notes in a C major scale going into the 6th grade. But to have that harmonic knowledge and to know that when I'm playing an E in concert band, it's the major 3rd, to know that and not know how do I explain this? Like I know it, but I don't know it. You know what I mean? Like I know the sound. I recognize the sound. I know where my pitch needs to be for that chord to be in tune because I know the chord, but I'm not necessarily concentrating on how my mouth is playing the trumpet. You know, there's a balance here that is very hard to do both, I think, as a young person. But the fact that I wasn't just trying to hit an E on my own, I was trying to be part of something bigger, you know, and as I had that feeling of what that E contributed to the whole thing. You know what I mean? Because my harmonic knowledge was there a little bit, just a little bit. I knew that I wasn't just playing an E, and I knew it wasn't just my responsibility. There's 50 people in this concert band. There's 5 other trumpet players that are hitting this E. You know, I know it's not about just me being able to hit an E. That's where I kind of struggle with the trumpet. You know, my relationship with the trumpet. I have to really focus to play this thing every day, whether it's 5 minutes or I say 2 hours. Like I've practiced 2 hours any day in the last like 10 years. But like, as long as I play this trumpet every single day, that's what I need to do. I know that that's for me, but yeah, I kind of got off my little tangent there. Sorry.
I think that was a good tangent. I wanted to add on to that a little bit. I think what I heard in there is some things that I've kind of experienced in myself and some things in my own learning where, you know, you may have a musical experience where you have the procedural memory where you can execute it, but you don't have the semantic or the syntactical stuff that you know of to articulate it in words. And that's something that I try to be sensitive of now as a teacher when I'm listening to my students, is they may have the procedural memory or some background knowledge in piano or something that they can create the music, but they don't know how that informs the rest of their playing or how that informs whatever their goal is with their relationship to music. And especially in improvising, that's super important. And you've got to think really critically about what your relationship is with music and what your goals are with it, because I mean, it's important to qualify this type of learning of learning music theory, understanding chord changes, chord scale relations, super important. But if all you're doing is music is magic, I don't know what this is, it's fun to solo, I like to play in the band, then that might not be the most important thing to focus on in that student's learning. But if you want to do something, if you have a specific level of playing that you want to achieve or a target position or something that you want to do in your life, then you owe it to yourself to not only be able to execute whatever it is harmonically that you're doing as an improviser, but you should be able to also say it in some sort of words or maybe with your fingers. And so if I find a student that is kind of in that area, like zone of proximal development, like they can maybe say something, but they don't have the words to say to really articulate it clearly to help them in their practicing, then that's something that's kind of our duty as the educator to look for those little light bulbs that might be happening that they might not be able to say with words.
I want to ask the group a question. Does everybody here remember the first time they played trumpet and had piano accompaniment? Just a solo trumpet and a piano player. Does everybody remember that experience the first time? Farnell, you're like, yeah, nah, I don't remember that.
It was probably a long. I think it might have been like a many years after I picked up the horn. Probably maybe like 3 years after I picked up the horn.
Interesting. Yeah. The reason I ask is because I remember the first time that I played with the piano player was for this solo and ensemble competition that we had to do in school. And I had only played my trumpet in band with other wind players and percussionists and by myself. I had not played with any other instrument besides people that were learning and, you know, just myself. And then when I had my first rehearsal with my school provided piano accompanist, right? Accompanist? Help me out, somebody.
Accompanist, yeah, I think you got it.
Accompanist. All right. I just didn't, I wanted to be
Piano person.
Piano person. So they, when we finally played together, I was like, I have to completely change the way I practice this completely. Like the whole thing. Like I'm scrap it, man. Like every little note that I made, that it was like, play this note short, play this note. I was like, no, I mean, doesn't really, I mean, yes, it matters what the music says because you're trying to play the music like it says, but like adding one more person into the equation, it was just like, okay, well, this is a totally different thing. And like, I remember the first time that happened to me, and that kind of was like, whoa, okay. So it's not just about playing the trumpet as perfectly as you can. You have to do that and everything else. Yeah.
And don't crack any notes.
Yeah, well, good luck. Okay.
Well, in the way I was thinking of structuring this discussion, we were going to talk about, defining what luck the dark side of luck, and then what intention is. But we've been ping ponging back and forth. And I think if I paraphrase everything, luck is those things, those areas that we haven't defined or haven't prepared for. And the intentionality part is knowing what our preparation is serving, and knowing what our goal is, and knowing, taking everything that we do and taking the chance out of it and finding a way to understand it and define it so we're prepared. I think Farnell has been a mentor of a lot of the younger artists in our group, and has provided a lot of advice to them, and now they're quite successful. But is that something you've conversations you've had with younger students who have come to you, or younger professionals who said, Farnell, how do I get started in this business, and how do you kind of direct them?
Yeah, I mean, it's still, encompass a lot of chance to it, but it's all about just being, I tell people, just being prepared, just being, having the necessary tools. A young musician, one of my good friends, Dimitri, when he first moved to LA, bass player, he was like, hey, I'm finally working with this Adam Blackstone camp, and I'm rehearsing in this band. What do I need to do? And I'm like, make sure you practice your music, make sure you get there on time, make sure after the rehearsal that you're not the first person to leave, like hang out, because you never know where you're going to get invited to hang is very important. But I'm all about just making sure that you have everything and being intentional about it, because you never know, even from the no's, you could turn your nose into yes, and just being prepared for any of it, because anything might happen. Like, you never know who might walk in the room, but just being prepared and ready, I feel like it's one of the most important things, period, and I'm like that with my trumpet. When I used to teach trumpet, I'm like, you have a part coming up. Why are you waiting to the last second to put the horn on your face? Because if you do that, you have a higher percentage of missing that note. So like I said, when I was on the road with Jill or Bootsy or whoever it was, my job is to make sure I hit every note as consistent and as solid as I can. So it's like, I will get the horn up to my face. So I don't want anything to happen. Anything can happen. I might get distracted and forget, or look at something and so it's just, I'm always teaching the young and mentoring the younger musicians just about, just having all of their things lined up and ready to go.
I was just gonna jump in real quick. You're saying just be prepared for anything that might happen, hang out afterwards, because you never know where you're gonna end up and who you're gonna meet, and all those things, and so I always, when my students kind of ask me about careers and how do I become who I want to be, I always just say, have you watched the movie Yes Man? Because if you haven't, watch it and then do that. That's basically the whole thing. If anyone out there hasn't watched a movie, the concept is that any opportunity that comes your way, it doesn't matter what it is, you say yes. And so, hey, you want to go catch a movie? Maybe you have a migraine, maybe you really don't want to, maybe you don't even like this person, say yes anyway, and go, and do it. And I can't tell you how many times that has worked in my professional and my personal life. I mean, some of the greatest things that have come out of music for me have been because I just said, cool, I'll see you there. Or, yep, you can count on me. I'll be at TMEA. That sounds good.
Yeah, definitely.
You're making me feel so guilty right now, Estella.
It really is just one of those things. And yeah, you never know who you're going to meet. It was at one of those, I think it was TMEA where I met Chris Bill, who's a trombone player, and him and I are really good friends now. And he brings this whole other layer of greatness to life. And I mean, just say yes. That's you want to change your luck to be in tune with the topic here. You want to change your life, just say yes to everything.
Yeah, and then when you get older, like myself, then you're working on how to say no as much as you can.
I'm already there, man. I'm not far behind you. I'm there.
Well, and
Definitely.
that brings up another like interesting sidebar conversation is, you know, it's not like you figure it out and you're like, I have defined everything in my playing and how it's all going to work. I don't need to worry about being lucky or not. And then something changes, you know, or you realize you've said yes to too many things. In a previous career talk, one of our colleagues was talking about a teacher who actually a couple of our artists, I think, had studied under. Their biggest piece of advice was at the end of the year, look at everything you're doing, like if it's 12 different things, because as a freelancer, you can wind up being way overloaded because you said yes to everything. Look at everything you're doing and take the thing that you are getting the least out of or the thing that you enjoy doing the least and remove it. And so, you know, this discussion of luck, it's not meant to be like, oh, you're a bad person, you're just depending on luck. But it is a moving target because as soon as you figure everything out, you realize like it's just a nice little island you're on or oasis you are for a little bit until a whole new things, you know, set of things crop up that are that you don't have the answer to, and then you got to kind of try and figure out that. So I think, you know, I hope my hope is that if you got anything out of tonight, you realize that you can't just depend on playing all the right notes and doing everything your teacher said, you know, because they're giving you the best of what they have, but you've got to mentally prepare. You've got to, your teacher or your colleagues can't tell you what you're questioning in your own head, or, you know, or what your goal is, or what all of your preparation is serving, you know. And you know, to what Estella was saying too, like you kind of have to do everything because you might say, this is my goal, I'm going to become principal trumpet of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, but as you move towards that goal, you might realize something else you like, and now your goal is going this way and you've got this sort of, so it's a moving target. But I hope out of everything you've heard tonight, attendees, panelists, that you guys, that we all have a reignited inspiration to search after those things that we can't define right now in our playing and our goals, and define them so that when we get to the opportunity that is the next step, it's not by luck that we got it, it's by preparation and intention of moving to that goal. Any final thoughts from you guys, the panelists? Any questions from the attendees?
Oh yeah, I'll have one last one. You were just saying how you know, you kind of think you figured it out and then you get to the edge and you're like, oh, I have so much more to do. That's music. And I watched this interview with Marie Spezial a little while ago, and Doc Severinsen, another trumpet player, you know, crashed the interview when he's in there, and then they're talking, which is just great to watch them do that. And Doc goes, well, I'm 93, and every time I go and play, I'm still learning every day, and that's the nature of music, and that's why it's great. There's never there's always going to be something to do.
Very true. Very true. I mean, in that case, yeah. I mean, I've done so many things and had so many different career paths, and you know, and it's just each one I get into, I just try to make sure that I know what I'm doing, and trying to be, like I said, my favorite quote is, I stay ready so I don't have to get ready. So it's just like I'm always learning, always just trying to figure out what can I do to succeed in whatever it is.
Stay ready, ain't gotta get ready.
Yeah. Who's that? Spice Adams. Spice Adams has it on the shirt.
Sean Martin says that every day of his life.
Oh yeah, I bet. Yeah.
Well, if I don't see any questions from the attendees, but again, if you'd like to join Team Denis Wick, you can post questions or ask anything, thoughts that come up after this. I want to thank Connor and Jay and Parnell and Estella for joining us tonight to discuss this subject, which, oh man, it was a lot of fun to hear everybody's experiences. And I'm always interested to see how these conversations take different turns. And so, but this was really fun. You can see previous webinars that we've had on a huge variety of subjects. If you visit Denis Wick USA, our YouTube channel, look for the webinar playlist. And then, you know, if you want to join the Buzz, our Denis Wick newsletter, you will have the opportunity to do that, having signed up for this. But that's a good way to also find out about any future webinars we're having, or the Denis Wick app. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining tonight. I really had a lot of fun, and stay tuned for future webinars we have with our artist group. Oh, and thank you from one of our attendees. So have a great evening, everybody. We'll see you again later. Bye-bye.